Wandering Winder here with some more previews, hot takes, Dominion Plunder. You know the drill. Let's jump right in. Hey, I should zoom in. This key. Great. Um, this is a very professional operation I've got going on here. Secluded Shrine, 3 cost action duration, plus a money. The next time you gain a treasure, trash up to 2 cards from your hand. Note that this is going to stay in play until you gain a treasure. So keep that in mind. There's going to be something similar to that effect on like all these cards. This seems quite strong to me. Um, you can like there's a good chance you open with this, you open with 2 of these, let's say, and then you're going to buy silver and silver. If you're lucky, you're going to get one on turn 3 and and one on turn 4. You're going to buy silver and silver. You're going to trash 4 cards, and then your deck is going to be 2 of these, 2 silvers, probably no estates, and 6 coppers. Um, which means you're already hitting 6 every turn, probably. You are, yeah. I mean, this just seems incredibly like just that, and then even just like playing money after that seems quite strong. Once you stop gaining treasures, these get out of your deck. This is like a really, really powerful thinner. Um, I like at the moment, I would kind of be surprised if this is not the strongest card in the set. Um, I haven't seen the whole set. The set's huge, but this seems incredibly powerful to me. Um, you do need to gain treasures in order for it to do pretty much anything. That's not that hard. Um, yeah, it just yes, it just seems exceptionally strong. I don't know. There's a lot more to say. You can use it in a drawing deck. Drawing decks like trashing, so you'll have to gain treasures. If those treasures are stop cards, that's not as exciting for the drawing deck. But I think this card is still strong enough that then you're just like, okay, well I'll play money then. Um, if the treasures aren't just blah stop cards, then this gets even better for those drawing decks, right? So like if you're getting supplies or crown or comes with the you get the trash when you gain a spoils whatever. Although the spoils thing, this is going to then going to keep popping back into like if you continuing to gain a stream of treasures from like a card that gains you treasures, this is going to keep popping into your deck even after maybe you don't want it to. I mean, the only downside here really is that it's a terminal copper, but just the trashing effect seems so strong to me. I mean, maybe I'm overselling this because um, you imagine like how much better is it really than Steward, which trashes 2 cards on play and then can later do other stuff. This this gives you an extra money and eventually gets out of your deck. Um, yeah, I mean maybe this is only strong and not like the most absurd busted thing. Um, so okay, maybe it's only a strong card, but it's going to range somewhere between strong and oh my gosh, how did they print this strong? Uh, gee, that Steward for trash in comparison is interesting. Hmm, I don't know. I mean, I guess I think the difference is the turn 3 and 4, right? If you trash with Steward, you're not getting anything for your deck. Here, you're getting a silver. Um, I don't know. That's kind of a big difference. That's kind of a big difference. But it's probably not really like tons stronger than Steward. It's probably about Steward level, but Steward is strong. I don't know. I mean, maybe this is still a bit stronger. It'll be interesting to see. I'm gonna move on now because I'm too much brain, not enough wandering winter morning time. Great. Abundance. It's a four cost treasure duration. It says the next time you buy, no, the next time you gain an action card, plus a buy and plus three money. Um, okay, so if you are gaining an action card this turn, this gives you three money and a buy, which you then need to use this turn or you're going to lose it. So, like if you have five money besides this, then you're going to need to get a three, which is honestly not that exciting. Um, it will stay out if you don't gain an action card, which is, I guess, nice. Um, I mean, it's like a cheap gold with some plus buy if you need that, but and it's plus buy if you need plus buy, but um, you do have to jump through a little bit of hoop to get multiple provinces out of this, right? Although I guess if you have two of these, you can buy one action, and then you're going to have two buys after you buy the one action, and then you could like double province. So that's probably fine. I mean, this I think is going to promote building, um, because it wants you to gain action cards, and it is plus buy, but it's also a stop card that just gives money and buy. It's a stop card that's it's only a payload card, so it's not going to be fantastic for building. I'm initially not super hot on this. Costing four is not that great. I mean, I don't know. Maybe early on, if you just want to be getting a lot of actions, then this is fine. You do need to keep in mind you need to be able to afford the action without the money that this thing gives you. So opening this seems reasonable if the actions you want are cheap, but if they even cost like four, it's a bit dicey. It's a bit dicey because you're not going to hit four without this money in a hand early on. So, but if they cost two or something, then this is going to get a lot better. Um, yeah, I think this is. I mean, this will probably depend a lot on how good the cheap actions are. I don't know. Contextual as always. This doesn't seem fantastic to me, but I'm sure there will be a lot of situations where it will have a home, which is great. Like I like that kind of design, that power level of card. Um, let's move on to a flagship. Flagship is a four cost action duration command. Gives you plus two money, and the next time you play a non command action card, replay it. So this is like a throne room, kind of, but also kind of not. Um, so you play a throne room and then you play whatever card you have, and I think you're down in action. Um, right? If you do this instead of throning. Say I throne a lab, I end up with two actions. I play this, I play a lab, I end up with two actions, but it costs me two actions, right? Okay, yeah. Because I had to play the lab. I still needed to have an action. So this requires quite a bit more setup. You need another village. Um, you can't just do throne stuff. You can't just throne a non-terminal. You need another village in order to be able to effectively use this card. And on the plus side, you're down in action, you're plus two money. The action is, I think, generally far more valuable than the two money. So I'm pretty sure that this card is significantly weaker than Throne Room. Um, having said that, I guess the thing you can do with this is play it at the end of your turn, and then at the start of your next turn, you get this kind of citadel effect, where your first action you play the next turn gets replayed a bunch, potentially a bunch. So it's just like maybe very different from Throne Room. You're not playing it early in the turn. You're more likely to be playing it late in the turn, which makes sense because you want to play your villages first. And then at the start of your next turn, you play whatever action a bunch of times. So it's just like a very different kind of deck. You could maybe just have one really good dry action, play a bunch of these, and scheme or top deck in some other way. There's lots of ways to top deck the good dry action you have. Um, you could play these with rebuild. These help you gain the rebuild, and then you get to play the rebuild first in your turn and play it several times. So there are things you can do with this. I still overall think it's worse than Throne Room. A much better opener, obviously, because it gives you money on that next shuffle. Um, yeah, like early on, the Throne Room effect isn't good because you don't have any actions, whereas this still does something for you. Yeah, overall, I think it's worse than Throne Room, but very interesting card, and should have some homes. Again, I like this design. I like the power level. I like the situationality. We'll go with that one that this card provides. Let's move on to the last card for the day, which is Landing Party. 4 cost action duration, plus 2 cards, plus 2 actions. And then the next time the first card you play on a turn is a treasure, put this card onto your deck afterwards. So, presumably you will have played this card in the turn. So you're not going to be able to play this every turn because you're not going to be able to trigger the bottom part the turn you played it because you played this. There's probably some edge case, and leave a comment in the comments section when you figure it out, where you can play this and still get to play it every turn because you're somehow getting the first card you play in a turn to be a treasure anyway. Oh, I guess the main edge case is like Crown. Um, you just play. Well, I mean, that's the Crown wouldn't help because you. Yeah, yeah. You need to be able to play this in your opponent's turn for that to work, right? I think you need to be able to play this in your opponent's turn, which there may be there probably is a way to do, but probably not reliably. You like react, play something that plays a vassal that plays this in your opponent's turn, but it's not going to be reliable, and it's also going to be very tricky because you still need the first card in your turn to be anyway. Um, let's not dig too far down that edge case rabbit hole as much as I love to do so. In general, you're going to be able to play this every other turn at most, and more likely less often than that, because you're just not going to have the first card you play in a turn be a treasure very often. So I think probably the main use case of this is as some kind of super experiment, where you just want it's just like a one shot Lost City, that you can eventually maybe sacrifice a turn at some point, or just have some turn at some point where you're gonna bounce all of them back. So it's kind of like, I mean, that's going to work well with mission, right? You use your mission turn or your voyage turn or whatever just to get a bunch of these back. So that's something to think about. I guess mission is kind of a way to play this every normal turn potentially. Yeah. So I mean, as a kind of one shot Lost City experiment kind of thing, that's not the worst, especially since you can bounce them back tactically. That's an okay card. It's not fantastic. What about Index, where I mean, I think Crown probably is the biggest synergy. If you can play Crown as the first card in your turn, you're going to get these back more reliably. So that seems like a very big synergy. Um, are there other action treasures that you could do similar with, or ways to play a treasure as the first card in your turn? Reap, maybe. Um, I mean, I guess you put this onto your deck afterwards. So, no, that would work, right? You play the Crown, and then this goes onto your deck. You can play it the turn you've played the Crown, right? If you can draw it. So that's nice. It also top decks, so you're going to have potentially you could have a very big turn, right? You can use these to set up a mega turn. You get a bunch of these and a bunch of bridges or something. These are going to stay out of your deck, and then at some point they all come back on top of your deck, and then you have a turn where you have a whole bunch of these lined up, and you can maybe do something very large. So mega turns is something you can do with this. In general, again, I think this is a little bit niche because it's asking a lot from you in general outside of the combos. But it's even going to be a bit of a role player outside of those combos. You're going to get it sometimes as a one shot or quasi one shot. Do I think you can play money with this? Maybe, but most of the money decks really want to be playing action cards in and along with those money decks, or the treasures, I guess. Money decks in along with the treasures. So it's going to be how much of a sacrifice is it? Well, I guess capitalism is probably also potentially a big synergy with this because you can play like a peddler or something first thing in your turn. So that's a big synergy. Um, the Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of synergies. Otherwise, it's still, a role player. If you're trying to play money with this, I think you're often going to be giving up too much, but you have to kind of figure out like how good is this. The thing is the village part is probably not so exciting in a money deck, but a cheap lab is kind of nice. But then, it's kind of comparing to caravan. Um, I guess you could get this multiple times in a shuffle in a money deck if these are your only actions. Um, you can't get too many of them. You're going to need some very good treasures and or a very weak board besides this in order for that to be plausible. So I don't think in a money deck it's going to be that good that often. But I mean, it's still the one shot thing. There's always going to be that, and then yeah, lots of combos. Let's move on. Let's zoom these in. Okay, great. So we get an event here that's Rush. Gives you costs 2, gives you a buyback, and says the next time you gain an action card this turn, play it. Um, in general, if you are buying deck control actions, that's not, well, I shouldn't say that. If you are buying like draw actions whose significant function of the action card is drawing cards, that will not work very well with this. If you are buying thinning actions, that may be a different story. But obviously, in order for that to work, um, the said action will need to be pretty cheap. This probably works pretty well with Page and Peasant because you immediately get to move them up, particularly if you get 4 on turn 1. Well, 4 on turn 1 with Page, right? 4 on turn 2, you're going to trigger a shuffle. It'll be a small shuffle, but that's somewhat less good and quite a bit less good probably than 4 on turn 1, where if you draw an estate, you've also improved your next hand and you have the treasure hunter already. So that's something to watch out for. 2-cost trashers. How many 2-cost trashers are there? Not many, but there is Chapel. You can rush you have four, you can rush and get the chapel, and effectively you'll have trashed one of your estates, as well as gotten the chapel in your deck that you were probably getting anyway. You have to forego getting a four in order to do that, and you'd have to get a three instead. So you have 5-2, you can get a trash. Well, no, if you have a 5-2, you get a trash a copper. That's worse. You probably just open a 5 with a chapel and be happy anyway. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be situations like those for early on, and for thinning, maybe even in the mid game to an extent. So that's some little utility. The other way that this could be useful is with payload cards. Anytime you need more plus buy right now and you just have a ton of money, which is not really that uncommon when you're building very large, because you don't want to get plus buy cards too early usually, because until your deck comes together and you have the money, the plus buy card doesn't do that much for you. So it's not that uncommon to preferentially like to build to suddenly I've drawn my deck and then therefore have a ton of money and now I need plus buy. With this, you can spend a bit of that money to get the plus buy right now. If the plus buy is coming from an action, if it's not coming from an action, you're out of luck. But if you were getting nomads, oh, this probably just combos with nomads, right? This costs two, and then you buy the nomads, and you get two money back, and then you play it and you get two money. I mean, it doesn't really combo with nomads. It kind of does nothing. The nomads was effectively costing two. It still effectively costs two. You're paying two money and getting the two money back. You get a free buy. So any of these woodcutter effects where you get two money and a buy, this effectively gives you an extra buy the turn you get that buy card. Any effect where you're getting more than two money, this makes that action effectively slightly cheaper for if you want to buy more things after. So you got a treasure or something. Also can work with remodel effects potentially. You remodel into a province to end the game or something. You do need to watch out for that. I suppose could make emptying milling provinces cheaper. Yeah, I mean other payload effects. The other thing is there may be some ways to get some infinite business going on, or quasi-infinite loops. Basically, this is going to open up some loops with, the big loop card King's Court, where in that case, gaining the action card, you buy some cards, and then you draw some more. You draw cards by buying an action that draws cards, and then you do this and buy a King's Court, and then suddenly you can play the cards that you've bought and drawn this turn, because King's Court then plays those action cards in your hand, and you chain. So you're going to need for that King's Court and actions that make enough econ and can draw enough cards, which is kind of asking a lot, but I mean the main thing it's asking is King's Court, because there's often going to be that kind of payload. Maybe not often, but there's sometimes going to be that kind of payload. So definitely need to watch out for this with King's Court, and to a lesser extent some of the other like chainy cards. Overall, though, even though I've described all these use cases, I again don't think this is going to be that strong, right? If you're buying some action that gives you three money in a buy, sure, this is a value there. You're getting, when you buy it, you get a little extra value, assuming you have enough money to afford this and that card. But is it that much extra value? I don't know. You're you're usually not going to get a lot of extra money from this, unless we're talking about a bunch of bridges or something, where the bridges are eventually free, and effectively you buy this, you buy a bridge, you buy this, you buy a bridge, and every time effectively it costs one money, and you're netting buys, and suddenly it explodes. So there's going to be a lot of synergies with this to watch out for. But absent those, it's not very exciting. But still, a minor use. Let's move on to a trait that is inherited. And setup is you start the game with an inherited card in place of a starting card you choose. I think like 90% of the time, maybe more. No, probably not much more. 90% of the time it's going to be an estate that you replace. Most of the time where it's not the estate you're replacing, it's because you don't have estates because it's shelters. And then every so often you replace one of your treasures. Which shelter should you replace? Probably usually going to be overgrown estate if you don't have a way to trash the overgrown estate. And if you do have a way to trash the overgrown estate, you're probably more likely to get rid of the hovel. And when I say have one, I mean that that's reasonable to get on the board. Maybe if the trashing is like is only at a place where it's like in your buy phase bought after you've played enough stuff that drawing the card off overgrown estate isn't very good. Maybe you get rid of the hovel instead. In terms of getting rid of a treasure, it's only going to be if somehow the estates are super good, potentially on like shepherd boards, maybe on like crossroad boards or inheritance boards, but probably you still get rid of an estate in most of those cases anyway, because that effect is so strong. I mean, it somewhat maybe also depends on what the inherited card is, right? And it's going to change all your openings and all the opening math and everything, right? Depending on what the particular card is. Suddenly you're playing that card on turn one maybe, and things get rolling and snowballing, and whether you get it turn one versus turn two, if it's like a lab or something that draws and you can play it every turn, suddenly these are going to be issues that you're going to run into. But you're going to be much faster out of the gate replacing an estate with presumably a much, much better card. You might replace a treasure also if, I guess if the inherited card itself a is a shepherd, maybe replace the copper. Same with crossroads. But I'm trying to think when else you would replace the treasure. Usually it's going to be, I think, cursed gold you might replace sometimes, but I think even that is usually better than estate. Yeah. I assume this happens after the phase where you replace the copper with the cursed gold. I'm not, I guess, 100% sure. There will be a rule book, but I assume that's the way that happens. Yeah, I mean, this is obviously going to change the games it's in a lot, and it's going to speed them up a lot in most cases. Even if it's like a masterpiece, replacing an estate with a masterpiece is going to have you open either 4-4 or 5-3. Probably, well, 5-3 is going to speed you up a lot in a lot of cases, and 4-4 maybe less so, but still you have more money on later turns and blah, 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 blah. And masterpiece is about the worst case. Maybe not exactly the worst case, but kind of close. Okay, lastly, we've got another trait, which is hasty. And when you gain a hasty card, set it aside and play it at the start of your next turn. So, obviously, again, this is good. This can be a village effect. This is going to make you want the hasty cards quite a bit more. Usually, if they're really bad, then less so. Like, this is not going to bump Fortune Teller into being a card that I want a ton. On the other hand, like if Fortune Teller is the hasty card, I buy it on turn one and I hit 5 on turn two. So, like, you're still going to get it a lot more often than you otherwise would, probably. You're just not going to be getting tons of copies if the card is bad. Obviously, it depends on what the card is, blah, 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 blah. Same deal, good with Trashers on turn one, good with Travelers, etc., etc. It's going to speed you up a lot in a lot of cases. It can be used as a village if it's on some non-terminal. Yeah. I guess this could theoretically be a downside in some cases. I think with something like inheritance, you can choose to have the inheritance replacement happen instead of this, because you get to choose the order of the effects, and by the time one happens, the other one won't be able to, because of a lost track or a stop moving rule or whatever it's called now. But um, so I think most of the time those kinds of conflicts aren't really going to hurt you. But there will be cases where, like, I don't know, you want to do gain and play of the card this turn, and you're not going to be able to because it's going to be set aside, and you're not going to be able to play it until next turn. That's going to be minor. It's not going to come up a lot. It's not going to be a big deal. But do be aware that I guess theoretically there is an edge case where this is a downside. Again, I don't have a lot to say about these traits, even though I've been babbling on forever. But yeah, I mean, it's just like it's going to be very dependent. You're going to have to look at the board. It's hard to say much about them in general, and they don't really have a power level that's static, whatever. Anyway, thanks for watching. This video is too long, and leave comments, leave questions, leave suggestions, whatever, things I missed, blah, blah, all that good stuff. You know the drill. Thanks for watching.